business here. Cheers.
Cheers. Down to business. The Dark Tower. Let's start with the fact that this movie has been tossed back and forth for decades as a thing that needed to be made. Ron Howard was attached to it. J.J. Abrams was attached to it. When Ron Howard wanted to do it, it was 3 films and 4 television series.
Wow.
This is such a large story. There are 50 Stephen King books, more than 50.
So it's almost like the Valerian sort of thing, where you have a million things condensed into one.
In a way. It's also similar to The Last Airbender, Avatar The Last Airbender, a Nickelodeon show that's frigging brilliant that was turned into a terrible Shyamalan movie because he tried to turn it all into one little thing.
You're going to be surprised when I tell you I haven't seen it.
Oh, yeah. How did you miss that one? But the thing about this movie, before we get too deep into it as a movie, is that the expectations are huge. This story is as old as me, pretty much. It's the first book, The Gunslinger, came out in 1982.
Oh, wow.
And so Stephen King worked on the 7 primary books in the arc of The Dark Tower for, pretty much my lifetime.
Wow.
Up until 2004, 2005, when he finally released the 7th book, and then he went back and played in that universe again. He wrote some stuff that Marvel went off and turned into comic books. There's some really cool other stuff happening in this universe, and every book Stephen King has ever written exists in the multiverse of the Dark Tower.
You were saying that, yeah.
So this isn't like, I don't know, 50 Shades of Grey. You're not taking You're not taking some trash bag book and turning it into
a trash bag movie.
A trash bag movie. You're taking the definition of the modern epic, the original modern epic, and turning it into a film. And you would think that's tailor-made for what Hollywood's doing right now. They go for the the Divergence, and they go for the Hunger Gameses, and they go for all these things that are long-running. You could have had a Harry Potter series here easily. There's a lot here. And so instead of making the first film The Gunslinger, like in the book, their first film is simply called The Dark Tower. And, I don't know, man. As a reader of the books, this is kind of the whole story turned into one sniveling 90-minute escapade.
Yeah, no, and here's the thing. I haven't read these books. This is going to be one of these episodes. Matt is an expert on these, and I sort of walked in blind. So you're going to hear
two very different perspectives,
but we can agree on one thing. We didn't like it.
It ain't good.
It ain't good. It is not good. But, I mean, I came at it from a bit of a different thing. I will say, though, it really did feel like everything all at once. Let's just throw everything at the wall and see what sticks.
Yeah. Well, when you've got thousands and thousands of pages of ideas.
Yeah.
And you're going to squash it down to a 90-minute movie, you're not going to really world build.
No.
You're not going to have the time.
You're not going to have the time, and it's not focused enough. It was kind of like that Valerian thing. I just felt like there was 3 cokeheads talking to me all over each other, all at once, cornering me, just going as fast as they could. At least at this one, they did it fast, which they didn't do it fast in Valerian.
Yeah.
But, it wasn't exactly quick and painless, but it was far quicker and painlesser.
So it had that going for it.
Which isn't raising the bar quite high. But.
No, and this director specifically was almost taken off the project in post-production.
Oh, really?
Because he tried to make it more of what the books are.
Oh, and they didn't like that.
And Sony was like, maybe we've got to bring another director in for post. And somehow they landed on this 90-minute running time that I think is mostly designed to be the entry point for everyone. So that if you haven't read the books, you show up and you're like, okay, this kind of feels familiar. It feels familiar because they've turned it into a freaking YA novel, basically.
Yeah.
But the idea that this movie is supposed to be available, supposed to be easy to access for everyone, I think flies in the face of the whole point of adaptations. If you're going to make an original concept, like James Cameron did with Avatar, your audience is everyone with a pulse because you need somebody to watch your movie and no one's ever heard of it.
Yeah.
But if you're doing a movie with 35 years worth of history as a book, what you want to do, Sony, is get the people who already like the book to like the movie.
Yeah, I mean, it's like what, they did with It, or the other Stephen King adaptations, things like that. I mean, I think Stephen King is an author that is a tried, tested, and true formula to get an audience. It's a built-in audience already.
That's
so why
the
not?
point.
Yeah, why not maximize and capitalize on that, right?
If you're refusing to do original ideas because the only thing you can get away with is something that is an established piece of IP, then for the love of Christ, do the IP justice. Because all you're doing is pissing off your core audience.
Yeah.
And if you've pissed them off and they don't like it, who the hell else is your audience
and
now?
You were super pissed off when you sent me a message saying, what did you think? I can't remember what the first part of your reaction was, but the last part was rage.
Rage.
I remember
Just
seeing the word rage and went, God damn, okay.
Because, okay, if I had to... I make westerns. I make sci-fi movies, but I also make westerns.
He doesn't just wear the shirts.
I don't just wear the shirts, I also put them in the movies.
Yeah.
I make westerns, and I make post-apocalyptic westerns, and for one reason, and that reason is Stephen King. That reason is his Dark Tower. It's The Gunslinger. That first book, goddamn, is so atmospheric. It is the West, but it ain't your daddy's West. It's a really cool, like, scary, not quite your world version of the West. And I ate that book up. And if anything influenced 6 Reasons Why and Mutant World, it's that. And, in fact, I've got 2 more movies that are sort of Westerns.
Yeah.
That both are so... shit, that by accident, they're probably better Dark Tower movies than this one was. Because the tone of this movie was so off.
I couldn't figure out what the tone was. That was the thing. I couldn't... It didn't stay... It didn't stay steady at all, and so I couldn't... It didn't find its footing ever for me. And that was really tricky because as somebody walking in blind, if it can't find its footing, I can't either. And then we're both fucked. We're both sitting in a room, me and a movie, going,
what am I?
What are you?
Yeah.
Do you know what you're doing? I don't know.
And here's the thing. The books seamlessly weave through genres of science fiction and then into... Exactly. If you're going to adapt something that is simultaneously a Western and science fiction and modern day and this crazy fantasy world, if you're going to do all of that, you, like, baby steps, man. There's a reason Gunslinger is basically a Western. And then the next book, Drawing of the Three, is basically a fantasy. And then the next book, Wasteland, is basically a science fiction movie, so that by the time you get to The Wizard in Glass, which is the first, like, giant one.
Glass.
Yeah, it gets weird. It gets weird. Awesome, but weird.
So nerdy.
Yeah. But once you get to that 4th book, you've established a world. And we'll get back to that 4th book, because the 4th book is basically a prequel. And the thing about this movie is that it simply bombed.
Yeah.
It hasn't even come close to making its budget back domestically.
You said the budget, I still wrapping my head around this. Tell me the budget again.
It's a $60 million movie.
This is a $60 million movie. And, like, some of the effects were, like, YTV level, kind of horse shit.
I often lament the sort of death of the mid-level feature film.
Yeah.
The sort of $40 to $70 million film.
Yeah,
they're all, like, $250 million or 10.
Yeah.
And... you've got really cool things like what James Wan is doing with his horror universe
For sure.
that you can do in the, like, $20 million range.
But you can do shit even cheaper. Look at Blumhouse.
You could totally do cheaper, but the thing that drives me nuts is that if you are going to do the epic of our time, The Dark Tower, you gotta spend more than $60 million on it.
Yeah, and to be honest, like, this didn't even look like a $60 million movie.
Because they tried to do something way too big.
Too big.
For the money they had.
Yeah.
And you know what you could have done for $60 million, Sony? The Gunslinger.
There we go.
The Western.
Focus
the simple,
on the one.
beautiful Western because
Yeah.
some of those effects in the desert, they're just so beautiful. And that they could afford to do. Those like phantasmagorical sandstorms and things.
Sure.
Those were cool. Now, going more into this as a film and less about an adaptation.
Yeah.
The running time on this thing is weird, man. 90 minutes.
I will say, for me, I could have dealt with about... Because they could have cut off about 86 of those minutes for me, but I mean, that's a lie. I'm going to say the first 20 minutes I found relatively interesting. It just started to get real messy. There were a few things in there that, that kind of held my interest. One being, there was a lot of really neat connections to It, which is another Stephen King adaptation, and the film that is going to be released soon. Connections to that new film and even just to the book. I mean, having not read The Dark Tower, and Matt telling me prior that book, sort of every single other Stephen King book works in that world. Like the house that the kid goes into.
Yeah.
It looks a lot like the Neibold house. At the very beginning of this film, what's the kid's name again? Jake. Jake gets his ass kicked by some snot-nosed kid in school who actually is in It, the new adaptation, who plays a snot-nosed kid in It called Henry Bowers. His name is Nicholas Hamilton. He's an Australian actor.
And he's officially pigeonholed into
as the piece of shit.
Kid.
Yeah. There's this great thing, with the Pennywise and that whole broken down carnival in the film. There was a couple neat little sort of homages to it that I thought were really cool. That was quite interesting.
The Overlook Hotel shows up from The Shining.
Yeah, I forgot about that. That was kind of neat. The things that I thought were kind of a guarantee, like Idris Elba's performance, was shockingly... I hate to say it, I've never seen him fail, really. Actually, he didn't really work very well on The Office.
Yeah, that's fair.
But, I felt like this should have been a surefire thing, but it really wasn't. It didn't really work, and I don't know if it was the writing. I mean, here's the thing for me too: time travel films, they're hard to do. I was thinking about it earlier, which are the only two that I can say that I think worked and I still really like are Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure and Back to the Future. And
wow, those are two good ones.
Yeah, and I can't think of any other ones I think that have really worked for me.
Looper's good.
Oh, I never even saw that one.
Looper's worth checking out.
Didn't they film that here?
I don't know if it might have been filmed.
Is that the one that
it was premiered here at TIFF? No, it's
which one? Oh, it's Jumper.
Yeah, you're thinking Jumper. Looper is a Rian Johnson film with Joseph Gordon-Levitt and...
Oh, that's why I never saw it.
And Bruce Willis, but it's pretty freaking
Bruce
cool.
Willis film.
It's cool.
Anyways, we're getting off topic.
See Looper instead of this. But the thing about this film is that Idris Elba's performance is... I feel like he read the books and realized that the character Stephen King wrote really is the man with no name, the Clint Eastwood character from The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly trilogy, the Dollars trilogy. Now, here's the thing. That was a time before Clint Eastwood really knew how to act. So he could grimace real well.
Yeah.
He could smoke a short cigar. And that was the extent of what Eastwood could do. But Idris Elba has so much more range and capability, and he steps into this role, the role of a man who is the last of his kind.
Yeah.
And puts none of the nuance into it that he can, because he's Idris Elba.
That's what I was like. I thought that was the one thing I thought, well, this thing might fall to shit, but at least there's him. And then I was like, you too? Come on.
Well, and going back to the flaw of this adaptation, the thing about the gunslinger, the thing about Roland, is that he's a character that is questing to save the tower in the books.
Yeah.
In the movie, all he wants to do is kill some dude. And those are very different...
Okay, so that's not like that.
No, in the book, he doesn't even know who he's chasing. He just knows he's chasing an evil man in black. In fact, the first line of this movie should have been, "The man in black fled across the desert, and the gunslinger followed," because that's how the book begins.
Oh.
And there's this one moment where a disembodied voice says it, and it's about Jake's visions. But the entire book the entire series is based on this altruistic desire for Roland to save the tower. And the movie is based on Roland wanting to kill a guy because he killed his dad.
Yeah, this guy Walter or something.
Walter, yeah.
Let's talk about the Man in Black. Actually,
Yes,
let's
the
get
Man
to
in
that.
Black.
Let's talk. Yeah, let me hear your thoughts on this first.
Okay, I like Matthew McConaughey in exactly one movie ever, Contact. I thought he was perfect in that. Every other movie I've seen him in, I've been kind of like,
Was he in Hell or High Water?
I don't remember him being in it. I don't think so.
I feel like he should be. But
he should.
Anyways,
He would have fit in.
What
did you think about his role? Because
I hated it.
Yeah, I was measuring it up against this incredible, mysterious, wonderful character from the books.
Yeah, as someone who hasn't read the books, as someone who just walked into it blind, holy fuck did I hate it. And I know he's not supposed to be a likable character, but it wasn't his character itself I really didn't like. I just really didn't like his performance. His dye job was terrible. He was doing a horrible, like, shitty magician kind of thing that sucked. I didn't buy it. It was like a poor man's David Blaine mixed with like a Chris Angel kind of thing. And it just sucked.
Yeah, and that's a good description.
And it was greasy, and he looked greasy, and I didn't like it.
And it
wasn't good. I mean, it just wasn't good. And no.
The mystery of who this character is so beautiful in the first
book. There was no mystery. They gave him up right away.
Yeah, in fact...
And they give his name, Walter.
Yeah, the name Walter is such a lovely reveal in the book. Oh. And in the movie, there's this moment where Idris Elba just tells Jake, yeah, it's Walter.
Yeah.
And it's like almost a comedic thing. Like, I sort of enjoyed the change to it in that way.
Yeah.
And as I was constantly, like, bitching and moaning about every element of this film, I constantly went back to the thing that Stephen King and the filmmakers said about this movie. Which is that
what did he say?
Stephen King said this movie has the spirit of the book series.
Oh.
I don't know that I'd agree with that, necessarily, but it's probably the nicest thing he could say about it.
Yeah.
But what it does do that's interesting is... The Dark Tower books, 7 books, well, 8 if you count the one he popped out in 2012, but all the books, 50 of them, for argument's sake, are a cycle. If you read to the very end of the 7th book in the series, and if you haven't yet, now is when you stop this video. And if you plan to, now is when you stop this video. But at the end of the 7th book, there's a coda. And it specifically says, Stephen King writes, don't read this unless you really, really want to know what happens next. And of course I did. And what it does is Roland takes this artifact and uses it, not realizing it will bring him to the very beginning of the Gunslinger all over again.
Oh,
the energy of... I've got goosebumps. It's so good. The energy of Roland perpetually and forever stopping the tower from falling is what holds our universe together, and it's frigging brilliant and beautiful.
Why didn't...
Well, here's what the filmmakers said about this film. That this film is a different cycle. That every time it happens, it kind of happens the same way, but maybe it's not exactly the same way. And this movie, that doesn't end in a way that makes you think anything else is going to happen, because happily ever after is pretty much where this movie ends.
Yeah, and it kind of just cleaned itself up real nice and quick there. I mean, I
doesn't ask any questions that make you want to, see the second one.
I didn't even find the final sort of battle even particularly interesting. I will say, though, it had kind of a cool John Woo face-off sort of thing to it, which I liked, but it also had some real shitty stuff with glass and rocks and something.
Bad CG.
Bad CG. Worst performances. I didn't find Matthew McConaughey to be... I just found him to be like a smarmy little bitch. I wasn't threatened by him. I wanted him to die. Definitely wanted him to die, but I kind of want everybody in movies to die. So it doesn't really, like, there's nothing special.
As a horror fan, I can see how
Yeah, there's nothing special about that, you know?
Yeah.
So, the other weird thing about this movie, did you find it was edited really poorly and strangely?
Specifically the action sequences.
Yeah, well, there was also a thing in the middle, I think when him and Jake... When the Gunslinger and Jake meet, there's one where it's almost like in the middle of a sentence and then it just stops and they're like standing on this cliff or something. Yeah. I was like, the fuck, is this a student film?
You can really tell that the filmmaker the filmmakers in their attempt to make something that they could release.
Yeah.
And, to come to a an agreement with Sony on what that movie is, because the studio's got to be happy as well.
Which is, that can get absolutely
that
sometimes
can,
just
get in the way of a filmmaker's vision, or get in the way of a great book being turned into a great movie.
Or something that an audience will like because the film company decides they want something different.
And man, I've made movies with networks and studios, and they have their 2 cents, and if you're making the movie for them, they're the client.
Exactly.
And
it's just unfortunate.
Yeah, the thing about this is that it got pulled in 2 directions and landed in the middle, and this movie doesn't know what it is. It doesn't know if it's a Western, if it's a science fiction film, if it's a fantasy film. It doesn't know if it's an action movie or a thriller. It doesn't know if it's got horror elements. It's got so many strange things. You can do all that so well, though.
I mean, look at like Near Dark. That's a great example of a apocalyptic, sci-fi, fantasy, horror western, and it works on so many good levels. But it has a great director, and it has great performances.
Yeah.
And it still stands to this day. I mean, I was thinking after that, a good palate cleanser would have been to watch that, because I was like, I kind of need something. This didn't make me feel good. I also want to point out, who else didn't feel good in the theater? There was 2 other people. I want to point this out. On a Friday night at almost 10 o'clock at night, there was 3 people in the theater that I went to, me and 2 guys that were sitting just a little bit below me, who I had to actually go up to and tell them to get off their phones. So it wasn't just me that didn't really get the film.
So Sony, this attempt to make the movie for the everyman, they'd rather be on their phones.
They were on their phones, and I had to ask them to get off to show your film a little bit of respect, and actually me, just because I had to watch the fucking movie. Even though I was looking at the exit sign a couple times. It does say that in my notes that I did. I was looking at that exit sign.
Yeah, the thing about making a successful franchise, and, we talked about this in The Mummy, the thing about making a successful franchise is making a good movie first.
Yeah, you gotta make that springboard, man. You gotta have a kick-ass springboard. And that was the thing. The first 20 minutes, I was like, whoa, this is gonna be dope. I was so excited. And then it just blew its load too quick.
Yeah, and it just sort of turned into the mega mix of young adult novels that have been coming out for the last 10 years, and this movie isn't that.
No.
It shouldn't be that. The book isn't that. There are so many interesting characters. The main character of this story is Roland.
Yeah.
And so to have it go through the eyes of Jake, that's not the way in, and I think that's where the mistake really was.
That it was, and I was trying to think, like, did I think the kid, I don't know if I think his performance was bad, or if it's just there was not the direction to make it work for him. I don't know if it's necessarily his doing.
I mean, I liked the kid. I just didn't like anything he did, because it was all out of...
Yeah.
It was all out of what should have been happening to call this a Dark Tower movie. I mean, right down to the production design. Like, everything about this movie feels like it's almost there, and then somebody screwed it up.
Exactly.
The portals...
Oh my god.
Are just so dumb.
They're so
dumb. Because they're like this technological bullshit.
Oh fuck, they look so stupid.
They look so dumb.
Guys, come on.
What those are
come on now.
Fantastical doorways that just hang in space and make no sense. That's how you make it cool. You make it make no sense. You don't try to make it make sense. It's not Stargate, for Christ's sake.
Yeah, it did feel a bit.
It felt like dumb Stargate.
It felt like dumb Stargate. That's what I mean about that cheap, thoughtless kind of plopped in CG, and the cheap, thoughtless, like, use of it. Again, like, portals are a really cool concept, and
when
it's such a vehicle in this film, like, because it's a time travel film. You got to use your portals, like, well, I don't even really dig sci-fi.
Well, and it's like
time travel shit.
It's like a space-time travel film.
Yeah.
Right? There's so much at work in this universe that you need to add that fantastical layer, and nothing in this movie felt fantastical. The amazing, like, his guns are forged from the sword of Excalibur.
Yeah.
It's like, they kind of just do what guns do, though. So it's like only so
there was
exciting.
nothing very impressive about... Oh, that was another thing. There was that scene in it with him and the kid shooting at the tin cans and stuff or whatever. That's also an It reference. You'll see that later. But again, I mean, there was nothing really about it that made it seem like really special. They even had this little, I'm my gun, I use my mind or my heart or whatever to shoot my gun, blah, blah, blah.
Yep.
I didn't buy it. Did you? I didn't buy it at all.
And the sad thing is, I bought it when I first read the book.
Yeah.
And then I was watching it come to life in front of me. and I didn't buy it.
That is so sad.
It's really sad.
It is like, oh.
Yeah.
That's really hard. It's like it's almost like meeting like your hero, which they always say never meet like your favorite actor or your favorite something, never meet them because, it can't live up or it won't live up or you might be let down. And I don't think that it didn't live up to your expectations because I walked in with 0 expectations and it didn't even live up to mine.
And you know what? There are certain things that simply are a character, and it's really hard when it starts as a literary character. I'm reminded of another shit film, Green Lantern, starring Ryan Reynolds. There's a beautiful litany, really, that the Green Lantern has. It's the in brightest day and darkest night thing. But when that's delivered beautifully, and you're waiting for it to be delivered beautifully, that's the kind of thing that makes you just be like, yes, I love that character. In Dune, the litany against fear, fear is the mind killer. That just makes Dune work. But this is Stephen King's version of that. And you done fucked it up.
You done fucked it up.
It's just, and you done fucked it up with a great actor.
That was the thing that I was so amazed at. And I feel bad. And the worst part is having to see these people later too, trying to, promote the films. And Idris Elba's not a dummy. I think he knows exactly what didn't work about this.
Although, you never know. At that point, he shot probably a much longer script.
Oh, yeah.
Probably a much bigger movie than the one we got to see. So in his mind, this could be a fantastic film. I mean,
but he saw it.
I've got a movie in post-production right now that producers are doing, and I don't know what it looks like. In my mind, it's a frigging fantastic movie because I made the director's cut, and I'm like, yeah, this movie rocks. But they could do anything to it. For all we know, Idris Elba was like, that script was off the chain brilliant.
Yeah.
I did a bang up job. All my scenes are incredible, and then none of them make it on the screen.
Yeah, this is true. This is quite possible. I mean, but he did have to. I'm sure he did see it.
Some point.
I feel bad. The only thing I knew going into this was I may fucking hate this. This may be another like disaster movie for me, but at least there's Idris Elba who will put on a good performance. He can perform through any kind of garbage, and he couldn't.
No, this was a special flavor of garbage.
This was definitely its own unique Sony. I will give you this. You made a very new flavor, unique flavor, and smell of garbage. Nobody's done yet. I don't know. I don't know if you should do it again or if everybody should do it again.
Well, and this brings us to the fact that this movie has bombed so hard that there will likely not be any other movies. But the filmmakers and producers are dead set on making a television series that's a prequel.
Really?
Yeah, and the prequel story would involve Idris Elba in like a bookending capacity.
Who wants to make this though after they just lose all this money?
Well, this is such a beautiful property that people believe they can rescue it, pull it out of the fire. I mean, look at Man of Steel. That movie kind of blew, and then they kept making crap movies until this new Justice League movie apparently is a good one, and Wonder Woman was.
But you have to change up your formula, and if you're going to use the same, filmmakers, same everything.
I don't know that it's the same filmmakers.
Oh, okay.
It is the same producers.
Okay.
But with any luck, they want to do like the 10-hour sort of cable thing.
Oh my god, I'm not doing 10 hours of this fucking
so,
thing. Oh,
if you've read the books, this is the story of Roland's first quartet. This is the story of his...
Quartet?
Quartet is like there's a lot of weird words in the Dark Tower. Quartet is like a group of people who are assembled and bound through fate. Oh. And so his first group of 4 pals... who are all gunslingers, young, 14-year-old gunslingers.
Why is he hanging around with 14-year-olds all the time?
Because he was 14 as well. It's like them when they were all kids.
Okay, because this is good.
It sounded weird.
Yeah, it does.
So, Roland's 14, not played by Idris Elba.
Okay, thank you.
And so, all of these kids, basically, it's the time Roland first fell in love and how he lost that girl and how his heart was broken and how he became the gunslinger that we know. And The Wizard in Glass,
oh god,
the 4th book,
the nerdiest name on God's green earth.
I love these books so much.
Sorry, I know you do. I love
but-
Stephen King, but Jesus Christ.
Yeah, but that's the story they want to adapt as the series, and I imagine they would delve into some of what's happened in the comics as well. It's just that time period they want to play with. So they're not sure if they're going to be able to get Matthew McConaughey to play Walter.
Oh no, it would be such a shame if they didn't.
But they definitely won't have Idris Elba for the main meat of the series. Now, this was something they wanted to do regardless of how the movie goes. And the movie went badly.
Yeah.
Critically panned.
Yeah.
Financially a disaster.
I don't think I've met anybody who really, even remotely... I thought when you asked me what I said and what I thought, and I said, meh, I thought that was generous.
Reviews.
Yeah. That was, I was still trying to think that maybe there was just... because these fucking people on their phones and whatever, like I just was, or I wasn't in the mood or something, but nah, it just really wasn't good, and I don't think there's been anybody who's really had much else to say.
No, the consensus is pretty much that this movie is anywhere from uninspired to disappointing to just the worst. And
Valerian,
I mean, I liked Valerian more.
Valerian holds a special place for the worst. Fucking hell, let's not get back to that one.
But The Dark Tower is... it's interesting that the movie is not called The Gunslinger or The Drawing of the Three or any of the other book titles. It's called The Dark Tower because there are plot elements in this movie that are pulled right out of every single book.
Wow.
So they really did tell the whole story.
That sucks.
In the movie. And I don't understand why. Like, there's no bad guy, there's no threat at the end of this movie. The tower is safe.
Yeah.
Like, everything that happens
Jake
in this
has
movie...
a new parent kind of thing.
Like, the thing is, in the first Gunslinger book, in the first Dark Tower book, The Gunslinger, Jake dies twice.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, like, crazy shit happens. And in this movie, Jake is just, like, a little bit kooky.
Yeah, he's
That's
a little bit weird, and his mom and his weird, really angry, incredibly and inexplicably angry, like, wicked stepfather kind of thing. They're trying to get rid of him to send him to some, like, basically like a mental institute for a few days because he draws pictures and he has bad dreams and he got his ass kicked by the snot-nosed kid in school. I mean, none of it really, again, it's just like, I didn't understand, it wasn't explained and it wasn't built properly as to why all of these things are so dire and why they're so extreme and all of this stuff. And then at the very end, it was just like, hey, want to come with me? Okay. Like,
if this movie was made in, like, 1998, I think people would have really liked it.
Yeah, actually it would have made more sense because things also then just sort of happened and nobody gave a shit and it didn't really make sense.
This attempt to turn 7 beautiful books and 50, really, Stephen King books into one movie is just a failure, really. Because they have betrayed the books.
Yeah, it sounds
and
like it.
They have done something that doesn't actually need to go anywhere else. This could be it.
Yeah, I mean,
and there's no questions at the end where you're like, oh man, what happens next?
No, it tidied itself up. But I mean, not only that, you really betrayed your core audience. So my issue here too now is the built-in audience that you had that was stoked for this film. Now you're going to try to say, okay, you didn't like the film, but we're going to do this TV series. You've already lost them.
Yeah, you've lost the goodwill.
You lost them, and everybody else didn't like it either. So what are you going to do? Who's going to watch this?
I feel like the only hope for Dark Tower now, really, is in 10 years to try again.
Yeah.
And to do it correctly.
Hopefully everybody forgets about this one.
Yeah, right?
Just a blip on the radar.
It's like the animated Hobbit movie. A lot of people forgot about that.
I don't know.
It came out in like the 70s and it was really weird. Like Rankin and Bass did a Hobbit movie. That's strange. But right now, all we remember is how great Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings movies are. And, you know, how those Hobbit movies maybe didn't need to happen. But we have a memory now of the film executed well. And so I can only hope that in 10 years, some responsible Dark Tower book loving filmmaker is, handed the movie, and he or she gets to make a great gunslinger film. Maybe that filmmaker has already made a post-apocalyptic western, so you could be like, oh, look, maybe that person's good at this.
There's a guy I know.
But no matter what happens with the Dark Tower, I hope that someday this truly epic, awesome pop culture opus gets turned into a movie and a series of movies that are deserving, because this is not it.
I want it for you so bad. I do. You were so stoked, and I hate seeing, people's favorite things kind of fall to shit. So I'm sorry about that. This one sucked.
I appreciate that.
I do feel bad. I mean, I don't want to say up top, but
But you know what? We've got what looks like a really good Stephen King movie coming.
Oh, fuck yeah, we do.
With It. We've got this remake of Flatliners coming up.
Hell
We're
yeah,
gonna do that. We've also got some neat sort of underground movies that we want to do as well that are coming up. And then there's Thor Ragnarok. So I'm thinking we're moving into a fall that is going to have some exciting movies for us to do. So, dude, let's up top about that.
All right, up top.